I've already made a video on Kabaneri's first season explaining why I enjoyed it, specifically relative to Attack on Titan in the case of that video, but I want to speak to the community as a whole here when I say you should be excited about the recent announcement of some upcoming project for the series. What confused me at the time and continues to puzzle me to this day is the reaction to Kabaneri, specifically the negative one. It isn't that I don't understand how people could dislike it. On that front, I believe I have a solid understanding. Rather, I don't quite get this resentment of and seeming total distaste directed towards Kabaneri. As Digibro makes the case for, Kabaneri was, is, and always will be a dumb, stylish action series. The plot is somewhat bare bones, some character motivations are shaky, and if that made the show unenjoyable for you, more power to you. However, the show represents something most claim to want more of out of anime, that being a relatively ambitious original project with a specific vision. Its appeal will be somewhat narrow, certainly a more artful anime would have an easier time garnering broader acclaim, but for those of us who bought in the moment we saw that neo-80s aesthetic brought to life, Kabaneri was a total blast. It feels like most harsh critique of Kabaneri comes from a place of applying this standard review formula to the work, instead of examining its appeal and how it executes on it. I'm far less interested in how many storytelling rules an anime broke than if it has some element that can make it really enjoyable regardless of its adherence to those other rules. And while this way of looking at things is less objective and requires a conveyance of one's thoughts on it in a more personal manner, that is far more interesting to me than seeing someone plug all of its individual elements into a formula, which I could just do for myself if I really wanted those results. What did Kabaneri do well? What did it do poorly? Give me the why for your answers to both of those. How engaging are its strong points to you? Do its shortcomings actively undermine those strong points, or merely fail to enhance them? It's this line of critical thinking, this willingness to engage with works on their own terms, and really understand what will make people enjoy them and be turned away by them that is what most engaging pieces of critique in my eyes tend to contain. I think people should step back and realize that not every one of these original shows with visions will be catering to them. And I get it, that does suck. I can't claim to be above this because it's a natural reaction that I too experience. With them being relatively rare, although thankfully we seem to be getting more and more of them in recent times, you feel like you just missed out on a chance to get an amazing series, because for many, myself included, it tends to be these more ambitious works that make up the bulk of their favorites. And before you cry Attack on Titan ripoff clone cash grab, let me posit the theory I put forward in my previous video on Kabaneri. That theory being that Tetsuro Araki and friends loved the basic concept of Attack on Titan, and so wished to make their own work in that vein without the constraints of an existing source material to follow. They certainly don't seem to be in too big a rush to make that second season of Titan! With Kabaneri being as much of a perfect fit for Araki's directorial style as it is, perhaps the best out of any of his works, it seems likely that this is a passion project, and not a mere cynical replication of formula. This is one of the medium's most distinctive creative voices getting their chance with a megaphone, which is something most of us would like to see happening even more often. Why should you be excited about this announcement of more anime in the franchise to come, though? Well, if you're interested in the production side of the industry, you should be very interested in the new 0.5 grade shadows that Kabaneri employed in order to bring Haruhiko Mikimoto's old-school character designs to life in a world of digital paint and animation, detailed in a fantastic blog post that I'll link below. Their ability to implement it was somewhat limited, so it had to be reserved for only a handful of money shots in each episode, but this new software invested in by Studio Wit and being led by chief makeup animator Sachiko Matsumoto shows some immense promise. A lot of people were quite unimpressed by Kabaneri's visuals beyond those money shots. Now take a moment to imagine a world where Studio Wit's anime consists entirely of animation in that style, with that level of depth and richness to every image. I'm certainly rooting for their endeavors in this area. What about something to get excited about for those of you who aren't total industry geeks, though, Excuse the appeal to sentimentality here, but I think you should be excited on the behalf of other people. Now hold on, that isn't nearly as facetious as it may sound. I really do think much of the anime community tends to be a bit too self-centered when looking at the offerings of anime we're given. There's a huge range of tastes among anime fans, and a ton of little niches within the fandom, and as I outlined earlier, it is rather easy to get jaded about someone else's niche getting something while yours misses out, or receives a subpar work. Look at the massive crash and burn of Captain Earth a few years back, not due to it being this unbearably shitty series, but merely because it was a new original Studio Bones mecha series with hand-drawn robots, something people still pine for, but that has become increasingly rare, and it was rather mediocre in most people's eyes. They felt betrayed by this series, in a way that is quite understandable. I do think it is somewhat inevitable that this current state of affairs will be a part of the anime community, because the existence of all of these passionately beloved niches is one of its defining characteristics. But if we can start moving towards being excited that our fellow anime fans are getting something that will really cater to their interests, instead of getting upset that it wasn't something appealing directly to us, I think we'll be in a much better place overall. This does not mean you shouldn't campaign your hardest for those niches you'd like to see getting some love. It just means you should try to accept the results once that election is over. Huge thanks to Goose, Chelsea Chester, and all of my other wonderful patrons who keep the wheels on this crazy train spinning.